How do? Welcome to part 2 of the TrakTrike video series. In the first video I made a drive shaft for the track unit and a frame to mount it on, and I managed to get a motor on there as well and prove to myself that I can drive it. Now I've got 2 of these units and I need to make a frame to put them on. So let's make a start. A really important feature of TrakTrike is that I need to be able to dismantle it and get it in the car. The biggest piece is the frame. There's sort of like a taper that's made from 2 27mm round pipe sections that are about 1.2 metre in length, and the cross pieces are 20mm steel box. These are also notched to allow them to fit over the frame nicely, so the first thing I need to do is get on with notching these. Not really used a notcher before, so I 3D printed these alignment blocks. They're all named rear right hand side, front left right hand side, so I don't get them mixed up. And they should help me to align the angle of the hole cutter to where I want the notches, because of course the frame is tapered. Using the alignment block, I can set the correct angle for the notch and its horizontal and vertical position on the box section. With all the parts cut and notched, I lay them out on the patio just to double check everything was going to be okay. So when I was happy with the layout of the frame, it was time to get it welded, and this is where you get to see some more of my atrocious welding. The tracks are attached to the frame with these flange bearings that are mounted onto some 5mm steel plates. These have got a square notch cut in them to interface with the square section of the frame. There's also some reinforcing bars on the back. I cut these bearing plates with the angle grinder and cut the notch on the milling machine. The flange bearings are going to be mounted on with some bolts, and I'm using a transfer punch to get the centres right for these holes. I do one hole first, drill it, and then move on to the next one with a bolt in place so that each hole is well aligned with a particular bearing. Each time I've got a new hole, I simply put a bolt through, tied it up with a nut, got the bearing realigned, and got the transfer punch out for the next one. With all 4 holes drilled, time for a bit of a test fit, and it's going to be held in place pretty well with these 12mm bolts. The bearing mount plates have got these reinforcing strips on the back of them to give them a bit of extra strength. There's one at the top and one horizontal and vertical, and these have got some notches cut in them to allow them to interface nicely before welding. Cutting all these parts out from plate steel has made me realise that I really need a plasma CNC. I haven't got much room in my garage, and the Art Droid was the ideal fit because it just doesn't take up anywhere near as much space as an XY table. When I finish with it, I can just pack it all up and stick it on a shelf, and it's really made a big difference. Each of these pieces takes about a minute to cut on the Art Droid. I've made the slots on these parts a little bit too big, but it won't matter when they're all welded up. I welded the reinforcements together first before I stuck them to the bearing plate, and then I welded the bearing plates to the frame. I'd like to think my welding's getting a bit better, but I'll let you be the judge of that. The flange bearings aren't particularly consistent, so I marked each one up to make sure it matched up with the appropriate bearing plate. The track unit is held in place by these 2 suspension strut legs here. These are welded to the track drive frame, and they are in turn welded to this 20mm bar here that's suspended between these two flange bearings. This is a Tubella pipe bender from Stacey's. It's pretty good. You can get different die for square and round pipe of different sizes, and it's completely operable by hand. So with your material in position, you just tighten this clamp up to hold it in place before you start bending. And then this huge ratchet, it just does the bend. It's fantastic. Each end of the leg's got a 20mm hole cut in it, and this is going to match up with the bar that's going between the two flange bearings. There's 2 of these legs per track unit, and these are ready to be welded on. I wasn't convinced that these notches alone would be enough to fasten it to the bar joining the 2 flange bearings, so I created these reinforcing bars. Again, the art droid made pretty quick work of cutting these out. Double checking that these reinforcers actually fit on the bar, and then try them on the track unit itself. Just moving it into position to give it a try, making sure that the suspension legs match up with everything. You see these notches are cutting the legs go over the bar, and why I was a bit worried about them. So with the track frame now all welded up, it's time to see if it's actually going to fit onto the frame. There are going to be 2 of these adjustable pneumatic shock absorbers to help smoothen the ride out. Each end of the shock absorber is mounted to the frame with these 2 plates. They've got a square section cut out of them so they can go over the frame before welding. And the art droid makes it really easy to cut lots of these out quickly. I needed to get the suspension mounting plates the right distance apart, so first of all I measured the distance between the bushings on the shock absorber. With a bit of scrap alley I bored a hole the same diameter as the shock absorber mounting bolt, and then parted this off to match the dimension between the bushings I just measured. And with a bolt holding the 2 plates in place, I know they're the right distance apart and ready for welding. It helps if you turn the welding gas on, apparently. Knowing these 2 plates are the right distance apart, it means that I know that I can just clamp it in place and get on with the welding. And of course a quick test fit of the shock absorber onto these plates to make sure everything's okay, and that's looking pretty good. Next was the ultimate stress test. Yeah, that seems okay, and it's actually pretty bouncy and alright. Quite pleased with the way that's looking. Okay, that's the frame done. Reasonably pleased with the way it turned out despite my atrocious welding, and I'm particularly happy with the suspension. The next thing that I need to do is to put the steering in place. I'm going to be using a fat bike tyre for that, and making all the steering column and everything myself, so please join me for that, and I'll see you then. Okay, here's a teaser picture of what the TrakTrike's looking like so far. As you can see, I've made good progress with the steering. Please join me for the next video.